So, World Regions Geography 110, Latin America and the Caribbean, Part 2, Geological Resources, Risk and Water. So we're going to talk about the physical landscapes at first. The Amazon Basin, which is this region right here. There's the Amazon River right there. Goes up here in and up in here. So it drains this entire region. All this water from here flows into the Amazon and out into the Atlantic. The other major rivers are the Orinoco, which is up here. It drains this region into the Atlantic. And then the Plata River, which is down here. And it drains all of this region into the Atlantic. The Andes Mountains, that are this mountain range right here, running all the way up into this region. The Altiplano, the high plain, it is this region up through here. It's where most of the people live that live in the Andes. Caribbean islands, all this right over here. Lesser and Greater Antilles, and then the major islands, and kind of coming over towards Yucatan. And the coral reefs which surround these, which are very important for the survival of the islands and help to protect the islands from storms. Geological resources and risks and water continued. Earthquake and volcanic hazards. So you have shifting tectonic plate boundaries. The whole of the Caribbean islands are all susceptible to volcanic plate shifting. If you have two plates coming together, it causes severe earthquakes, such as what we've seen in Haiti. We've seen them in the Dominican Republic before, all the way through all the islands. There are some volcanoes in the region, particularly in the southern islands. They're volcanic. Going into Central America, extreme earthquake susceptible region, and of course Mexico. Mexico City has some of the very severe earthquakes. A lot of wealth in the region, mineral resources, precious metals. At one time in the 17th and 18th century, about 40% of the world's silver production came out of one mine in Latin America. And there's more and more fossil fuels. In the Caribbean, if you've ever been to the Caribbean or the Gulf of Mexico, you see lots of oil wells out there. You have Venezuela, major oil producer, Brazil, starting to produce oil off its coast. And you're having other countries producing a lot of different types of mineral, copper in Bolivia, and tin. So what you have, geological resources, risks, and water continued. You have water resources. You have large water systems. We talked about that the Amazon drains something like 60% of Latin America. Orinoco drains the northern part above the Amazon basin, and the Plata drains the southern part below the Amazon basin. And then the Pacific, which is everything west of the Andes Mountains, flows into the Pacific Ocean. You have lakes, Lake Titicaca. You have waterfalls. This is the largest waterfalls, Iguacu waterfalls on the Parana River, and it's where Brazil, Argentina, and Paraguay meet. And it's a major tourist attraction. It's a beautiful waterfall, as you can see. I've never seen it, but it's everything I've seen about it's pretty nice. Geological resources, risk, and water continued. So there's tremendous biodiversity, particularly this region through here and this region over here. Extreme biodiversity. Plants and animals were domesticated in this region and up in here, and also in some parts of here. As you can see here, these are where these plants originated. And you know, the avocado, pecans, squash, beans, henequen, which is a fiber that's used to make burlap bags, sweet potatoes, maize, you know, corn, tomatoes, Tabasco, peppers, manioc, which is cassava, papaya, and vanilla bean, all originated here. Grapefruits in the Caribbean, and then you have cashews and pineapples, potatoes, cayennes, coca, pumpkin, cacao, which is chocolate. That's the drug. That's the drink. Quinoa, rubber, peanuts, lima beans, tobacco, upland cotton, and pepper, all in this region. This was one of the areas where agriculture developed. This area and this area here and this area here, and in those areas great civilizations also arose, because where you have agriculture you have the ability of people to stabilize, in other words to build cities and begin to build towns. And you had the rise of the Mayan in this region. You had the Incas down here, and you had the Aztecs up in this region. So you have tremendous agricultural development, and you have tremendous civilizations that were built and were flourishing at the time the Europeans began to move into Latin America. So what these are here, this is just a tropical forest with a pretty bird. This is actually the Atacama Desert, one of the driest deserts on the earth, and that is the Pacific Ocean. I mean, it blows right up to it, but because of the way the wind patterns are, it doesn't get much rain, which is kind of surprising. And this, of course, is mangrove, and you can see the root system here, which allows for the water to come up, allows for the trees to be stable, and this actually works to protect tropical regions from the heavy storms. And so that's why it's so important. Geological resources, risks, and water. Fate of the forest. So the rainforest, you have a lot of rubber production, particularly in the Amazon Valley, up the Amazon River. You had clearing for rubber productions. Was much more so around the turn of from the 19th to the 20th century and the early part of the 20th century, before synthetic products began to take over that rubber market. And now most of what you see in your tires and things that we think are rubber are really not rubber. They're actually man-made products. Temperate rainforests. As you move farther north and farther up in elevation, you get more temperate rainforests or temperate forests. So it's the different types of forests. A lot of these have good woods for furniture and for other uses. And they're heavily forest harvested. Green Revolution, you probably have heard of this. It's something that impacts the San Joaquin Valley, and basically what it is the use of fertilizers and insecticides to increase production. That's the primary part of it. And the problem that you have is when you have that, you do increase production, which tends to make people want to clear more land to produce more crops so they can become wealthy. The problem being is that increases the amount of chemicals in the soils and in the rivers, and creates this circle of poison, which then those chemicals, particularly the fertilizers, cause algae blooms, which kills off some of the fish life and insect life in the waters, and which allows other insects to flourish, which means you need more chemicals to control those insects, and then those chemicals end up in there killing off more animals, and it becomes a very ugly circle of poison and destruction, and can have really adverse effects on our environment and on the global environment. Biofuel production, taking a lot of the material, growing material, particularly here in Brazil. Believe it or not, in Brazil, in this region here, they grow a lot of sugarcane, and it's not necessarily used for sugar. It's used to make alcohol, which is then burned in the cars. So it makes a biofuel. Biofuel production, if you go to the central part of the U.S., you see them using rice or the waste from corn or other products for that. So there's a lot of biofuel production going on all around the globe. If you look here at this, by 2050, this is suitability for growing coffee. These are some of the major coffee growing regions. So it's less suitable throughout Brazil. When we think of coffee, we often think of Brazil, or we think of this region here, Mexico, Honduras, Guatemalan coffee. This is caused by global warming. Is causing these regions, the temperatures to increase, it to dry out, and therefore coffee doesn't grow as well, which means they may have to move production to different regions. Geological resources, risk, and water, ecotourism, and conservation. I don't know if any of you are familiar with that, but if you've ever been anywhere, here's a beautiful picture of an ecotourist resort. I think it's in Costa Rica. The whole idea is to have the least amount of impact on the land. You see lots of natural land here for people to hike, not use a lot of chemicals, try to protect the environment, protect the reef here. You can see the coral reef here. Try to protect that. Bioprospecting, if you're not familiar with that, there are lots of companies that send people out into the jungle to find plants that have particular qualities that they can use to create medicines. And that bioprospecting is big time business. And payment for environmental services, PEZ, this is paying, say like maybe you're a big city here downstream on this river. They would pay people up the mountain where the river originates to maybe have more environmentally friendly agricultural practices, to be able to protect the source of the water, so that they can have more water down in the big city. So it's payment for protecting the environment paid by mostly urban to more rural areas. Amazonian deforestation. So deforestation in Brazil is a severe problem. You can kind of see here, and you look over here, incredibly deforested regions as they move into this region to try to do more farming. Indigenous territories, trying to protect that. Eventually, if you continue this deforestation, you are going to release more and more carbon into the air, which is going to increase global warming and speed up the process, and going to cause a lot of problems for everybody throughout the planet and impact us all. So it's not just a Brazilian problem. It's not just an Amazonian problem. It is a problem for the entire planet and needs to be dealt with by the entire planet.